The cave was cold and silent, except for the soft drip of water echoing off stone walls. His breath was shallow. His body was weak. Blood still oozed from the wound on his shoulder where the alien claws had ripped through him earlier that day. Jonas wasn't supposed to be on this planet. His team's shuttle had crash-landed after a surprise ambush from the Ilaria predator species, known for eating their prisoners. Now he was the last human left alive in the mountains of Rocktel. He managed to crawl into this cave just before nightfall, using a broken spear for support. He didn't know the terrain, didn't know the creatures, and didn't even know if help was coming. All he knew was that if he stayed outside after dark, he wouldn't survive. His wound throbbed. He pressed his back against the cave wall and closed his eyes for a moment. He needed rest. But deep down, something told him not to sleep yet. Then came the sound. Light, but fast. Feet touching stone with silent grace. Not human footsteps, not heavy or clumsy, it was her. He opened his eyes slowly and tightened his grip on the broken spear. She stood at the cave entrance, tall, blue-skinned, fiery red hair, like flowing lava. Her eyes glowed like twin suns under a storm. Two curved blades rested in her hands, dripping with fresh kill. Her armor was elegant, but dangerous. Her face was painted with ancient warrior markings. Jonas recognized her species. Instantly, Karali, one of the feared hunters of this planet. And based on her armor, she was no scout. She was royal-born. A huntress bred for war. She sniffed the air like a wolf. Then her gaze locked on him. Her lips curled slightly, not into a smile, but something hungrier. Not just for food. For the fight. She stepped closer, slow and deliberate. Jonas tried to stand but stumbled. Pain shot through his leg. He couldn't win a fight like this. Not against her. Not in this state. Still, he raised his spear like it meant something. The alien huntress tilted her head. She didn't attack right away. She studied him, circling slowly like a panther. Then she spoke in broken English, her voice low and sharp like a blade. You smell like prey, but you fight like predator. Strange mix. I like it. He didn't respond. What could he say? He was half dead and facing something that looked like it could tear a tank apart. You humans. Always surprise, she said, now standing. Directly in front of him. We were told you run. But you don't. Why? He tightened his jaw. He couldn't show weakness. Because we have something to protect, even when it hurts, even when we bleed. That's what makes us human. For the first time, her expression changed. It wasn't mockery, it wasn't hunger, it was confusion. A quiet pause lingered between them. Her blades lowered by an inch. He took a chance. Are you going to kill me or not? She stared at him for a long moment. Then, to his shock, she dropped one of her swords. The metal clanged softly against the stone floor. I came to kill. But now I don't know, she said. You bleed like food. But speak like fire. No one warned me about that. Jonas blinked. Was this a trick? Some Karali test before the strike? Or had she really changed her mind? I am called Thiraka. I was told to feed on any human I find, to return with proof of kill. But I've never met prey that dared speak of pain like it was honor. Her voice cracked at the end. Just slightly. Like something was fighting inside her. Hunger, duty, and now something else. Jonas finally sat down again, breathing heavier. He didn't have the strength to argue or run. Then what are you waiting for? She took another step forward. Then, slowly, gently, she sheathed her remaining sword. Her glowing eyes softened. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I don't want to eat you anymore, human. I want to understand you. And for the first time since the war began, Jonas didn't feel like prey anymore. Jonas didn't move even as the alien woman knelt in front of him. Her fingers hovered near his wounded leg, her glowing eyes locked on the torn flesh. Every part of his mind screamed to back away. But his body couldn't move, and a strange silence had fallen between them. Tharaka's hands were skilled. Too skilled for a killer who only hunted. She pressed her palm gently against the wound, and for a moment, heat surged through Jonas's leg. He gasped, expecting pain, but it was warm, soothing, like a pulse of life wrapping around his nerves. "You bleed too much," she said softly. "If you had stayed outside, the cold beasts would have taken your body before sunrise." Jonas flinched. "So you saved me." Tharaka didn't answer right away. She stared at her hand, stained with his blood. Then she wiped it on her armor without hesitation and stood up, turning her back to him. "I don't know what I did," she said. "Maybe I broke the rule. Maybe I am already dead to my kind." He watched her silhouette outlined by the firelight flickering from her torch. Her tail moved slowly, almost thoughtfully, as if her body was just as unsure as her words. "You didn't kill me. That means something. You had the blades, you had the strength. So why didn't you finish it?" Tharaka looked over her shoulder. Her face was blank, but her voice betrayed her inner war. "Because no human ever looked at me like you did. Not with fear, not with hate. Just acceptance." Jonas breathed in deeply, confused by her honesty. She had hunted his kind. She had nearly killed him. And now she sat in a cave with him, questioning her own purpose. "Back on your ship," she said. "What did you believe we were?" He swallowed, then answered without hesitation. "Monsters, night creatures. Predators with no soul." She nodded slowly. "That's what they told me about you too. That you destroy, take, conquer. And yet here we are, one broken human. One lost predator." Speaking like equals, Jonas leaned his head back against the rock wall. The pain in his leg had dulled slightly. He could think more clearly now. "Then maybe we were both lied to?" Tharaka walked to the cave entrance and glanced out. Night had swallowed the land. Strange alien shapes moved in the distance, glowing eyes blinking in the dark. The wilderness was alive with danger. She came back, her face hardened with a decision. "You cannot stay here. Come dawn, the Karali scouts will smell your blood. They will not spare you like I did. And what will you do if they find you helped?" "Me," she didn't hesitate. "I'll be hunted, marked traitor. Maybe worse." Jonas met her gaze. "Then why help me at all?" Tharaka paused. For the first time, she looked unsure. Then, she whispered something almost too quiet to hear. "Because I see something in you that makes me question what I am." He didn't understand her fully, but he could see the pain in her eyes. She wasn't just a warrior. She was alone, maybe more than him. Maybe always had been. Jonas tried to stand and with effort, rose to his feet. He winced, grabbing onto the cave wall, but Tharaka was already there, holding him steady. "You should rest," she said, guiding him down gently again. "The storm outside will hide our heat trace. But only for a few hours. Then what's the plan?" She pulled her cloak over them both, her body surprisingly warm despite the cold stone beneath them. "At first light, I will take you through the fire paths. I know ways others have forgotten. But if we're caught, you must promise me something." Jonas nodded. "What?" "Do not say my name. Do not tell them who helped you. Let them think you survived on your own. If they know I turned, they will burn my family's name forever." He hesitated, then placed a weak hand over hers. "You have my word?" Tharaka closed her eyes slowly, her breath calm and steady. She didn't flinch from his touch. She didn't pull away. The silence grew again between them, but it wasn't empty anymore. It was full of something new. Something not yet spoken, but slowly taking form. For the first time since the crash, Jonas didn't feel completely alone, and neither did she. The wind howled across the rocks above the cave. The fire had died down, leaving only glowing embers. Tharaka sat upright while Jonas rested, watching the cave entrance without blinking. Her swords were sheathed, but her hands were always near them. Every sound outside made her ears twitch. She could smell movement in the night. Small creatures, maybe scouts. Maybe worse. The wild didn't sleep, and neither could she. Jonas stirred under the cloak. His body trembled slightly from blood loss and cold. Thiraka leaned closer, pulling the fabric tighter around him. Her fingers brushed his shoulder without hesitation. "You humans are softer than I thought," she whispered. "But you don't give up. I respect that." Jonas opened one eye. "Is that a compliment or an insult?" "A truth," she replied simply. "We're taught weakness is shame. But now I wonder if mercy is not weakness, but strength." He sat up slowly, using his elbow for support. The pain in his leg flared again, but it wasn't as sharp. The warmth from her body had done something. Or maybe it was her presence. "You didn't have to stay. You could have left while I was asleep. Why are you still here?" Thiraka didn't answer immediately. Her gaze stayed fixed on the cave opening. She was listening, sensing, measuring the danger that waited beyond the shadows. "I told myself I'd leave. That I'd walk away before dawn. But when I looked at you, bleeding, and still alive, I couldn't do it. Something inside me refused." He shifted to sit beside her. They both stared out into the dark together. The silence between them wasn't heavy. It was calm, like the air before sunrise. "I don't know your world," Jonas said. "But I think you're more than what they made you into. And you're less of a monster than I was told to expect," she replied with a slight smirk. "You bleed, you shake. And yet you speak like a leader." The compliment caught him off guard. He wasn't a leader. He had barely survived. But there was something in her eyes that made him sit taller, even through the pain. Suddenly, her hand shot to the ground. She pressed her palm flat against the cold stone. Her eyes narrowed. Movement. 2, maybe 3, West Ridge. Claws, not boots. Trackers. Jonas froze. "Your people." "No," she said quickly. "Something worse. Wild cur beasts. They smell blood. Like smoke. If they enter this cave, they'll tear you apart in seconds." He tried to stand, but she held him down. "You can't fight, I can. But I'll need to draw them away. You'll die out there." Thiraka looked at him calmly. "Better I die with purpose than leave you to be torn apart." "I made my choice the moment I lowered my blade." Jonas gripped her wrist. "Let me help, I can move. I can distract them too." Her eyes locked onto his. For a second, she saw the same fire in him she had seen the night before. It made her hesitate. Then she nodded once. "Fine, but you stay behind me, always. If I say run, you run. Understand?" "Yes," she helped him up. His legs were shaky but held firm enough. She gave him one of her short blades. The grip was warm, her energy still in it. He held it tightly. Thiraka turned to face the darkness. Her stance changed instantly, no longer gentle, no longer hesitant. She was a hunter again. But this time, her weapon was not just sharp steel. It was choice. It was change. As they stepped outside, the wind cut across the cliff edge like a blade. Shadows darted between jagged rocks. Growls echoed through the stone like thunder in a bottle. Jonas stayed close. The cold didn't matter now. His body moved with her, not as prey behind a predator, but as something new, an ally beside her. And in that frozen, deadly night, the human and the alien moved together as one. Asterisk. The ground was sharp beneath Jonas's boots. The rocks were slick with frost, and the cold air bit into his skin. But his grip on the blade Thiraka gave him never loosen. She moved like a shadow with purpose. Her body flowed across the stone with practiced grace. Her red hair whipped behind her like a warning flag to any beast watching from the dark. The growls were louder now. Closer. Heavy breathing. Claws scraping rock. The sound of muscle against stone. Thiraka raised her hand and Jonas stopped instantly. "Behind her. There," she whispered. See the split in the cliff wall. They'll come through it. Wild cur beasts always use narrow paths. Easier to corner prey. Jonas leaned to look. Two shapes moved in the shadows. Four-legged, thick-bodied, their eyes glowed dull yellow like dying coals. Their teeth were long and wet with hunger. He felt his stomach turn, but he didn't speak. He waited for her signal. Thiraka pulled a small bone whistle from her belt and placed it between her lips. She blew gently. No sound reached Jonas's ears, but the beasts stopped moving. Their heads twitched. They sniffed the air violently. Then, one of them roared and charged toward the whistle source. Thiraka grabbed Jonas's arm and pulled, pinned toward the left path. It was narrow and steep, but her footing was sure. He followed without question. Even as pain screamed in his leg, the beasts were behind them now. Fast, furious, hungry. Jonas dared not look back. He focused on the sound of Thiraka's footsteps ahead of him. They reached a narrow rock shelf, barely wide enough for a person. Below, it was a sheer drop. One wrong step meant death. Thiraka turned and reached for him. "Give me your hand." He didn't hesitate. He took her hand and she pulled him onto the ledge. Then she spun and faced the approaching growls. The first beast leaped from the ridge above. Thiraka didn't wait. Her sword flashed like lightning. The creature's body slammed against the stone, its blood painting the rock wall. The second one was smarter. It waited, watching, circling. It crouched low, snarling as it locked eyes with Jonas. Jonas raised his blade. He was no warrior, but he wouldn't die without standing his ground. The beast lunged. Thiraka shouted. Jonas stepped aside just in time. The creature grazed his arm, but didn't sink its fangs. Thiraka's sword struck again, this time deeper. The beast shrieked and collapsed at their feet. Jonas fell to his knees, panting. His arm burned, but he was alive. Thiraka knelt beside him, checking his wound. "Not deep, you're lucky," he nodded, trying to calm his breath. "You saved me, again. You stood your ground. That matters more." She wrapped cloth around his arm and helped him to his feet. They kept moving along the ridge until the forest began to thicken and the sounds of the beasts faded behind them. When they stopped, it was at the edge of a high cliff that overlooked a valley filled with glowing trees and strange blue light in the sky. Jonas sat down, his body near collapse. Thiraka sat beside him, her expression unreadable. "You fought better than some of my own soldiers," she said. "And you didn't run. Even wounded, you stayed. I couldn't leave you alone against them." She looked at him carefully. "Why not? I was your enemy not long ago. Not anymore." Her eyes softened slightly. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she asked a question he didn't expect. "What do you see when you look at me now?" Jonas thought for a moment. "I see someone who had a choice, and made a different one." That answer made her look away, not because she was ashamed, but because no one had ever spoken to her like that before. The stars above them were beginning to fade. Dawn was close. The light would bring heat, and with it, more eyes. They weren't safe yet, but as Thiraka looked at the man beside her bleeding, limping, yet still standing, she knew something had already changed forever. The sun rose behind the icy hills like a golden blade cutting through shadow. Jonas leaned against a broken tree, breath heavy, eyes narrowed. His arm was wrapped, his leg weak, but he stood without support. Thiraka crouched nearby, examining tracks in the soil. Her fingers brushed over the claw marks, reading their shape and direction with practiced skill. Then she looked back at him and nodded. "No more beasts, no patrols yet. But we have to keep moving. This ridge is watched during daylight." Jonas stepped forward, every muscle aching. "Where are we going?" She pointed toward a narrow canyon in the distance. "There's an old Karali temple buried beneath that rock. My ancestors used it for secret warpaths. If the lower tunnels still exist, we can pass through unseen." He nodded without speaking. Each step was harder now, but his will was stronger, not because of survival, but because he wasn't walking alone. They made their way down the slope, careful not to leave signs behind. Birds flew overhead, strange and sharp-winged, their cries echoing across the cliffs. Thiraka watched them with sharp eyes. If they circle 3 times, it means scouts are near. If they fly low, it means blood has been spilled. That's how we read the wild. Jonas glanced up at the creatures. And what if they vanish completely? She paused. Then death has already passed beneath them. They reached the canyon mouth by mid-morning. Thiraka led him to a split in the rock face. It was almost invisible, hidden by twisted vines and stone. Teeth. She pushed through without fear. Inside, the air grew colder. Ancient symbols lined the walls, carvings of old warriors, creatures that no longer walked the land. And in the center, a broken altar with a glowing crystal still pulsing softly. Thiraka knelt and touched it. Her hand stayed there for a moment, and her lips moved in silence. Jonas didn't speak. He could feel the weight of the place. My mother brought me here as a child, she said. Taught me the meaning of names and blood. She told me a time would come when I'd have to choose what kind of Karali I would be. And now you've chosen. She looked up at him. Not fully, not yet, but the path has changed. Because of you. Jonas took a step closer. His hand brushed the wall beside her. You didn't just save me. You crossed a line no one expected you to. That matters. She stood slowly and faced him. Her expression wasn't soft. It was steady, clear. The path below is dangerous. But if we make it through, we'll reach the edge of human territory. You'll be safe. I'll vanish after that. You're not coming with me. I can't. If your people see me, they'll kill me. Or worse, take me apart to study what makes me different. You know that. Jonas didn't respond. He knew she was right. But the thought of walking away from her now felt wrong. You saved my life. Risked your name. Your honor, everything. You're not just different. You're better than all of them. She stepped forward, close enough that he could feel her breath. Her voice dropped lower, filled with something fragile. Then why does it hurt to leave you here? He didn't have an answer. Not one she needed. Not in words. Instead, he took her hand and held it tightly. They stood like that in the cold silence of the old temple, surrounded by memories and dust and forgotten gods. Neither of them knew what the future held. But both had already crossed the line where enemies became something else. Asterisk. The tunnel beneath the temple was tight and dark. Old roots twisted down from the ceiling, and each step echoed against ancient stone. Jonas followed closely behind Thiraka, watching her carefully avoid the loose floor plates and crumbling stones. She moved like she had walked this path before. But even she looked tense now. Her body was coiled, alert. Her ears twitched at every sound. And her blades were drawn again. The old gods cursed these tunnels, she said softly. Some say their whispers still crawl along the walls. Some say they never left at all. Jonas gripped his short blade tighter. He didn't believe in curses. But there was something in the air here. Heavy, thick, like breath that didn't belong to either of them. They passed a wall marked with black claw scars. Thiraka ran her fingers over the scratches, then stepped faster. Jonas followed, ignoring the way the shadows seemed to lean in toward them. Suddenly, the path ahead opened into a wide chamber. At the center stood a statue with 6 arms, each holding a different weapon. Beneath it lay a fresh trail of disturbed dust. Someone's been here, Thiraka said. Recently. And not alone. Before Jonas could speak, movement flickered behind one of the stone pillars. Thiraka shoved him aside, just as a blast of red light cracked through the space where his head had been. 4 figures stepped into view. Karali soldiers. Not wild. Not lost. Trained. Armored. Their helms bore the crest of the Blood Pact. Thiraka stepped forward, raising her blades. Her voice was clear, commanding. "He is under my protection. Stand down." One of the soldiers lowered his weapon slightly. "You betrayed the hunt. You speak with prey. That makes you prey too." Jonas stood behind her. "We don't have to fight. We're just passing through." "Silence, human," barked the lead soldier. "You're lucky she hasn't gutted you yet." Thiraka's grip tightened. "If you draw your blades, you won't leave this place alive." The room held its breath. For a moment, no one moved. Then the youngest soldier stepped forward and spoke in their native tongue. His tone was uncertain. Thiraka responded calmly, her words flowing with strength and sorrow. Jonas couldn't understand the language, but he could feel the weight in her voice. Her people listened, faces tightened. Weapons lowered slightly, then the lead soldier turned and spit on the floor. "You've fallen. Let her rot with the human. We leave them to the dark." The soldiers vanished into the tunnel without another word. Jonas released the breath he didn't know he was holding. "You convinced them to leave?" Thiraka nodded. "They'll report me as dead. That's the only reason we're still breathing." She turned and began walking again. Jonas followed his mind, heavy with what he had just seen. "You gave up everything for me. I did what felt right. That's all." They reached the final gate, a broken slab of stone blocking the path to the open world. Together, they pushed until light poured through. The world outside was warm and green. Hills stretched across the land. In the far distance, Jonas could see the signal tower of a human outpost. He turned to her. "This is it. I can make it from here." Thiraka nodded, but her eyes didn't leave his. "You could come with me. You'd be safe." "I'd make sure of it. I would not be safe, not among your kind. I'd be a monster again. Just wearing a new face." Jonas stepped closer. "Then what?" "Now, I return to the mountain. I find a new path, one that's mine, not theirs." They stood in silence. The wind brushed past, lifting her red hair across her face. Jonas reached out and tucked it gently behind her ear. She didn't stop him. Their faces were close. But she stepped back before anything more could pass between them. "Your people need to believe you survived on your own. Remember what you promised. I'll keep it. But I won't forget you. And I won't forget the human who made me question everything I believed." With one last look, she turned and disappeared into the tunnel. Jonas watched the stone fall back into place, and then he started walking toward the tower alone. The gates of the human outpost hissed open as Jonas limped through them. Soldiers rushed forward, medics following, their voices sharp and urgent. But his eyes were far away, locked on the mountain behind him. They asked him how he survived. "How?" "He escaped the enemy." He said little. Just enough to keep suspicion away. Just enough to protect her. He spent 3 days in recovery. Wounds stitched, bones scanned. His report was filed. Survivor of a crash. Escaped through enemy terrain. No known contact with Karali forces. The lie became official truth. But every night, when the lights dimmed and silence filled the room, he saw her eyes again. He remembered the fire in her breath, the way she stood between him and death, the way she chose him over everything she had ever known. On the 4th morning, he asked to walk. The doctors resisted, but he insisted. Step by step, he crossed the courtyard of the outpost, staring at the mountains in the distance. Snow still kissed their tips. Clouds wrapped them like cloaks. Somewhere inside those peaks, she was alive. He had dreamed of her voice in sleep. Not in war cries, but in soft words. In the quiet language only shared by those who had bled for each other. He wasn't the same man who had crashed into this world. That version of Jonas had died in the ice. What came out of the mountain was something else. Sharper, stronger, and bound to something deeper than war. 6 months later, the Karalian humans called a truce. Not peace. Not yet, but talks. A chance. The first bridge in years of blood, Jonas requested to be part of the diplomatic envoy. The council refused at first, then allowed it under close observation. He didn't care. He only needed a chance. When he stepped into the neutral zone carved into the valley between both worlds, his heart raced. Warriors lined the edges, guns ready. Eyes cold, trust was a fragile thing. Then she appeared from the Corrali side. Thiraka. Wore no helmet, no armor. Only a long cloak with the symbol of no clan, a free warrior. Her face was calm, but her eyes searched for him, and when they found him, something changed in her stance. He stepped forward. So did she. They met in the center, neither side spoke. The air was tight with tension, but Jonas didn't speak for the humans. And Thiraka didn't speak for the Corrali. They spoke for themselves. "You're alive," he said, voice steady. "And you came back," she replied, voice soft. They stood inches apart, surrounded by rifles, surrounded by fear. But neither moved back. "Do they know what we are to each other?" she asked. "No," he said. "But maybe one day they will." Thiraka's hand brushed his for a second. Just enough. Just real, and in that silent moment, where a war had once raged, two hearts beat in the same rhythm. She tried to kill him for food, but in the end, she offered herself instead, and he accepted her not as prey or enemy, but as the one who changed his fate forever.